much all for joining us today. First of all, thank you very much to Holland Fintech. It's a pleasure to be able to be part of this Fintech Week. Secondly, thank you very much for our panelists to join us today, Adrian, Fredrik, Lewis, Amrita. It's a great pleasure also to have you on board today with us. And thank you for all participants. We are more than 50 participants and attendees today. It was a pleasure, and it's exciting that, you guys are joining us today here too. My name is Ignacio. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Hubuc. Basically at Hubuc, we are a platform that companies can access banking products such as cards, payments, or deposit accounts. We act as a single point of contact for customers, and we aggregate tier 1 banks, financial institutions under a unique marketplace. So we provide full managed fintech capabilities ready to embed into your existing products and services. We'll kick off with a presentation for each of you as panelists, and then we will directly go into some discussions around what is banking as a platform and how it may develop in the coming years. And then we'll have an open discussion with all our attendees. You have a Q&A that it should be open on the bottom of your Zoom link. Do not hesitate to, from now until the end of the meeting, to start writing down any questions that you may have for me, for the panelists, or in general, and we will be receiving your questions, and during the Q&A part of the session, we'll be able to discuss them. So yeah, if it's okay, let's start. Adrian, please.
Sure, yeah. Also big thank you from my side as well. I think it's a pleasure to discuss the banking as a service and API banking trend with all of you. So my name is Adrian. I'm partner at Ross Republic, which is a new strategy and innovation consultancy. We're fully focused on financial services and fintech based in Amsterdam, Berlin, as well as London. And yeah, we really focus on financial services and fintechs. All of our consultants have been working at fintech companies, neobanks, also larger banks, have been part of digital transformation programs. So that's also my background. So yeah, I'm looking at this whole banking as a service topic also from an incumbent banking perspective. And our goal at Ross Republic is also to help financial services players to succeed in digital transformation, to succeed in bringing new digital value propositions to life, to move into platform and ecosystem business models. Yeah, so happy to be part of the discussion today.
Good. Fredrik, maybe?
Yeah, hello everyone, and also from my side, thanks Ignacio for inviting me to this really interesting discussion, and hopefully we get a lot of great questions related to this topic. I have about 20 years experience from the payment industry, and I've worked. My last position was at Wirecard, which is a company probably everyone knows by now. And I had the role as VP Sales Retail, so I have a lot of experience from that side when it comes to how retailers need to transform and become much more digital, and also embrace new types of financial services. So it kind of taps into the topic where they will definitely be part of the journey moving forward. So I come from this industry, been doing a lot of different things in the past. So been at PaySafe also, and worked at the Resource Bank, which is sales finance bank. And long time ago, thinking back, I was also part of the journey where the telcos were about to move into the finance space like almost 20 years ago, with starting with the premium SMS and then moving into trying to launch some wallets. So if we look back and think about where we were 20 years ago with buying stuff on SMS, and looking at the topic today with banking as a service and really fast-moving pace on new innovations, I see there is a lot of things that will happen from now and on, with also regulators playing a big role in this. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Fredrik. Please, Lewis.
Thanks, Ignacio. Very glad to be here as well, of course. My name is Lewis Nurcombe. I am the General Manager BV for CurrencyCloud. CurrencyCloud is a cross-border payments platform. So we provide access to foreign exchange, the ability to convert currencies, to banking rails, the ability to make international payments, to receive international payments, to hold currency balances around the world. We exclusively provide that capability to financial institutions or sort of marketplace type providers who are looking to take that solution and build on it and take it to market as part of a wider proposition. So working with great companies like Hubuc, who are looking to change banking and offering international banking as a part of that. Obviously just moved to the Netherlands. CurrencyCloud, we've been regulated here now for since the end of last year, and super excited to be here. Very much looking forward to plenty of questions and a great discussion.
Thank you, Lewis, thank you. And last but not least, Amrita, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Amrita, we'll lose a little bit there. Maybe you can try to switch off your camera and you'll have better connection. Let's see. Yeah, not really, Amrita. Do you still hear us?
Can you guys hear me?
No, now it's better, I think.
I'm actually on my phone. Now?
Now, yeah.
Okay, all right. No headsets, no internet, old school. Brilliant. So thank you so much for having us here. There's an echo. So obviously Mastercard needs no introduction, so I'll speak about a bit about myself and my remit within Mastercard. So
Good.
My name is Amrita. I come from a background in banking, strategy consulting, and I joined Mastercard about 2 years ago from a business development strategy perspective. And then within that role, obviously Mastercard has been leading the way from an ecosystem perspective for networks and tapping into new technology. But we wanted to more understand how we can commercialize and work with this growing space within fintechs. So that was my first remit where I drafted a strategy. We looked at fintechs across the value chain. And that's where the service players became absolutely critical, right? Because as the payments pie is increasing with new innovative players, non-FI players, and with Mastercard's mandate about providing more choices to consumers and better, safe, secure transactions, banking as a service is a key partner for us in order to deliver that. So within my current mandate, it's about, so I head up fintechs for Western Europe. And what that means is we have strategic commercial deals, investments, and really trying to make sure that we continue to remain partner of choice for fintechs.
Good. Excellent. Thank you very much again for joining this discussion, four of you. And let's then start by asking ourselves what it means to access financial services through a platform, through a service. What it means according to you.
Well, I can start. Well, I mean, for me, from my perspective, obviously, if you look like 5 years ago, it was just extremely difficult to do banking if you're not coming from the industry. If you're a startup and you wanted to offer, let's say, integrated payment services, then obviously Stripe used that as a market opportunity to make it just extremely easy and developer friendly to tap into their APIs. Of course, it needs a little bit more than just connecting to an API, but that just made it easier for any company to offer financial services and integrate them into their customer journey. For me, that's like the key, that you look at it from a customer perspective, and that more and more companies realize that there is a huge value, not only from a monetization perspective, but just from a customer convenience perspective, to really integrate financial services. And the best way to do that is just through APIs. And for me, to do that as a service model, since we know that from the software as a service industry as well, moving that to the banking industry means for me that you use APIs to integrate banking services, which makes it much easier than it was before. And of course, it allows way more flexibility for new players to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that for me, the main difference, I mean, having been at CurrencyCloud for 5 years now and seen how many exciting technology companies have wanted to enter this banking space, but ultimately failed to do so because the access or the barriers to entry have just traditionally been so high. It's not enough, or it's not been enough, to have a brilliant technology idea or a great sort of revelation or innovation in a particular market, because unless you can create the financial infrastructure underneath that, you're essentially set to fail from the outset. And I think that banking as a service changes all of that. It means that new providers out there can access or they can build great businesses without having to worry about necessarily, let's say, some of the plumbing underneath. And it's not just worrying about the plumbing, it's having access to the plumbing. So I think it's a big shift in the market.
I can just agree. I think it hasn't been available yet, and what it means is that you need and you want to have quick, easy, and secure access to the financial services. And with this transformation, I think COVID is also showing that it will speed up the digitalization and the need for that you can offer financial services and probably bundle it in a totally different way. And now with having these players who can offer that makes it possible then for much more innovation, and also making sure that you start to become relevant for consumers and customers in their right channels, not just that you're forced to go into a bank branch to sign papers, to everything from open a bank account, which is kind of the starting point everywhere, that now you can sign up on these type of basic topics online, but the beauty will be now when you can offer a variety of financial services much quicker, and that means innovation will simply explode.
Yeah,
I would be interested in Amrita's perspective on that as well.
You're on mute, Amrita. My apologies.
No, it's
Lockdown life, eh? What can you do? This is the new world.
I don't know what's going on. It's like,
Yeah.
I think we lost her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, never mind. Rita.
Let's come back to it later.
Yeah. Let's come back to you later then. But then, if I hear you, I understand the this new business model where we can access this kind of products on demand on a modular way. But then, what do you think? I mean, then banking as a platform, banking as a service is more about a model of distribution, or is not a model of production, or is it both? I don't know. What would be your thoughts around that? And when I say distribution, I'm thinking about aggregating different providers and being able to provide this banking experience end to end from a single platform, API, white label product, or it's more about getting your license, opening that financial infrastructure, and then building your own products from that, and then make them accessible. So it's more about distribution, or it's more about production?
Yeah, I think it's first of all, I think the industry has been very product focused. You launch different products and you offer that to the customers. The shift now is really about, I don't think it's only about distribution. I think it's really about, the shift is about customer focus, that you really start to bundle products and services towards a group of customers, and then you not just offer one product. You really look at the need of that segment, and then you offer a variety of different things, and that goes into also how you distribute that. You need to be relevant and in those channels where these consumers or customers are present. So it's really about shift from product to a customer focus, and that is what this enables, the fact that you can offer it as a service online.
Yeah, I think, Fredrik, on your distribution point, I completely agree. I mean, I think that whilst fintech's been fantastic, it's still quite niche, and I think there's still a long way to go before we can say that these things are truly sort of in the public sphere and working on a global scale. So I think focusing from there, I think it is a really good point. I think back to the sort of decision as to whether to sort of build or focus on aggregating, I'm obviously biased because I work for a company which specializes in a part of the value chain and works with companies who want to aggregate. But I really do think that one of the great things about fintech has been unbundling what banks used to do poorly because they were trying to cover too much ground, and now we're getting to a position where we can rebundle. But I don't think there's much point in doing that if someone tries to be everything and doesn't improve the services that people had before. For this to really work, the end solution has got to be better, or at least the same as what existed before. So I think leverage those best-in-class providers, pull them together, add your secret sauce, and you can be providing solutions which are truly sort of best-in-class for providers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, from my side, what I really like about this discussion is that suddenly it opens up so many different strategic perspectives on who plays which role in this whole new ecosystem. For example, the banks, I think the incumbent banks, they're all now, after PSD2, obviously building out their API platforms, and they're all asking themselves internally, what are we in this ecosystem? And I think it's not only production versus distribution. There will be different players that take on different roles. Some banks that have the technical skills and capabilities, they will definitely move into also distribution and production, and both maybe as well. So using their balance sheet and tech capabilities to distribute that over APIs. data and capabilities and adjust the production factory in the background, which can be a successful business model on its own as well. Others will then look at the best solutions that are available on the market, like CurrencyCloud and so on, and curate that for their own customers. So you have a two-side model here, I think, as well. So it's about the distribution on the one side, but also about curation from best of breed solutions for your own target groups on the other side. And of course, then you have the specialized fintechs that are obviously at the moment way more advanced when it comes to the technology if you compare to the incumbent banks, who are really like Hubuc, specializing in banking as a service, and making this model work for not only the challenger banks and the new banks. I think that was the first wave, what we've seen, obviously also with Wirecard, but also with, for example, in Germany, Solaris Bank or Raisin Bank. They're empowering the new wave of new financial services providers, like the other new banks and challenger banks. And I think the next wave is helping non-financial services companies to also take a share and integrate, as Fredrik said, contextually financial services directly at the place where the customer is. And of course, those new providers like Hubuc make this distribution model way more efficient and tailored for any company that wants to integrate financial services. And I think this builds out a really nice ecosystem of product factories, distributors, curators, so to speak, the enablers, and then all the companies that are that sort of own the customer touch point that will then also orchestrate this whole customer journey, which can be banks, which can be non-banks. And I think that is a really interesting space that will really accelerate in the next years.
Amrita, you are on mute. Yeah, I think you have to unmute the phone. The phone is
not connecting.
No, still mute, Amrita. Or what about lag?
Now?
Yes, now.
All right, finally, 4G technology for the safety. Guys, first of all, apologies so much for, my house is under construction, so apologies for that. On the last question though, I did catch the whiff of it, and I just wanted to agree with some point of it and maybe provide a more ecosystem perspective on that, if I may, because obviously from a Mastercard perspective, we're agnostic, right? We work with the large traditional banks, we work with banking as a service players. We're all about promoting the ecosystem and moving things forward. So I think some of the points are very interesting. And then I think one of the things which is becoming evidently clear is the lines are blurring, right? So when we look at platform as a service, I think what it has done is it's blurred the lines in terms of where does true financial institutions stop, when does tech start, when does really someone become a payment company or a card company or anything from that perspective, right? And I think that is what is, for the lack of a less eloquent term, that is what is really cool about this space, if you will, because it's really blurring the lines. And I still think these are early days for this, right? So I think, right, we are seeing players who are going down and making the plumbing, as you called it earlier, more efficient, making the infrastructure like a no-brainer and making it easier to connect. But there are a lot of that. And then there are a lot of making sure that companies and individuals have a lot of choice, right? And so that's where the API platforms that are providing the best providers and bringing them together to provide new innovative solutions is key. And on that, I think one of the points, and apologies if I missed it and I'm reiterating, is at the end of it, right, we're all just trying to provide flexibility. Because what both of those choices, it's not so much as an either or, what that allows, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, is to have some of those more innovative ideas that have not been able to do before because maybe certain providers not able to provide it or certain infrastructure is not able to provide it. So because of this combination, because of this blurring lines, it's just able to push the envelope a lot further. And I think that's personally what I think is very interesting, and we have a lot to look forward to within this space.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd like to add a point that in this, usually you bucket everything into, let's say, financial services and payment, etc. But what we are seeing here is that it will evolve into including other services as well, not just these type of basic traditional payment services. It's about how to handle insurance, how to handle lending, how to also do other things and bundle that together. So at the end, it's the ecosystem is like you say, Amrita, it's blurring, and also the boundaries between different sectors are blurring at the same time.
Good. Okay. Small parenthesis here to remember to all our attendees and participants that do not hesitate to ask us any questions through the Q&A feature of Zoom. We have been already receiving some of those, and we'll be replying them in a few minutes. I understand what you are saying, but then how would you sum up the main changes into the ecosystem? Because and Adrian, you introduced it a little bit, this new kind of wave where not only financial companies will access services through a platform, but non-financial brands, non-fintech companies per se, they will be embedding those financial products. So how do you see in the coming 10 years develop this trend, and how this will impact the current ecosystem that we may see companies like Shopify or Uber or Lyft embedding those financial services as they have been already doing, right? According to Angela Strange, every company will become a fintech. So what would be your thoughts around that?
I'm happy to.
Sorry, go ahead, Amrita.
Okay, I'm happy to take that first. In terms of, I think, so to your first point, right? What is the line, or not so much as the line, but like if everyone's kind of embedding financial services into it, right? Then what's the difference, right? I mean, and this is something literally one of the first things that we worked in within Mastercard as well is how do you really define a fintech? Right? Like, where does it stop? Where does it end? I know there's a lot of great research with the big F and the big T and the small f and the small t and where it sits on the 2x2 matrix. And it's all fascinating. But I think if we keep it in mind with the end consumer, right? Because at the end of the day, and I don't mean someone purchasing, end consumer also being small businesses, also being merchants, also being retailers who are now coming to the payments platform from that perspective. From my old banking days, right? The cash or the money only goes around once you make a buck, right? This is one of the old MDs used to say this, right? It only matters, well, very old school, but it only matters when you make a buck, right? So all of these consumers and all of these businesses, that's kind of where the payment part comes in, right? That's what closes the loop. That's what hits your P&L. That's how you make money, and so on and so forth, right? Very old school thinking. I'm sure I'm annoying some people on the chat by saying that, but that's how money goes around. Right. And so from that perspective, and now what these banking as a service players, as we call them, enablers, are able to do is close the gap, right? They don't have to become financial institutions in order to be able to provide these services. So if they don't have to, and they can leverage platforms like yours and others in order to be able to do that, who's still a fintech, right? And I think that's kind of the communication. So from that perspective, if your definition of fintech is someone who's able to provide financial services or payments or anything within that, and yes, everyone could be a fintech. That's exactly where the world we're going to, right? But then, of course, like everything, the definition of a fintech will evolve, right? Are you the regulatory body? Are you not the regulatory body? Are you, the rough definition I use is, are you PCI compliant or PCI ready within the payments world, right? It's a very loose definition. It's a line in the sand. But those are the kind of things that we look at because we do see these things merging in some sense, thanks to banking as a service.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. I mean, it's it's an exciting time for this community. It's also a scary time. There's there've been lots and lots of revenue challenges and so on and so forth. And I don't think anyone knows quite how this is going to end up. But certainly one thing that really interests me about this banking as a service space is that as Amrita says, you know, you're going to have lots of companies who can become a fintech, but it's not their primary business necessarily. And that gives them a huge opportunity comparative to those of us who are specifically a fintech. You know, if you've got a football club who want to add a banking capability to their customers, you know, that's going to add value in terms of loyalty. It's going to help them attract a wider customer base, you know, and then there's revenue as well. But it's not predicated on the revenue. So you're going to see this huge shift in the industry as you've got lots of different providers out there who have got totally different reasons for joining the community, and are probably going to have quite a lot of existing separate business models behind them. And it's going to be a really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And you know, we've seen it all break down, and now we're seeing it all sort of start to compartmentalize again. And I, for one, have got no idea what's going to happen.
One really exciting thing which is happening is that cash is kind of on the way out, and I think that is a huge driver for innovation, new digital solutions and ways of handling payments and the whole relationship, which is I think one massive driver for offering new type of digital services. That of course COVID also has a huge impact on this, but there is a huge drive to launch services and also to the new generation that are now being brought up with the smartphones and the internet and a totally different way of behaving. This requires also that there is the possibility to offer totally different types of services, and to be able to do that, you need to be able to get access to that through these open APIs and APIs which Hubuc and others are offering. So that's these are trends which are just going to be even stronger in the future, where it needs to be products and services that are more or less online. They are on the mobile platform, and that's it. And you will see bank branches being closed down, etc. So there is a big shift now, which is related to both, let's say, the simple bank accounts and things that you do in a bank branch, and also how you handle cash, which will change the whole society that we live in, the way that we also get access to different financial services.
Yeah, maybe from my side as well. I think I don't think every company will become a fintech company. That's probably an overestimation. But if you take a step back and think about how companies can embed financial services and what options you have, if you go to one of the big banks and you have to go through the huge RFP processes and go through procurement and everything, it's just it takes so much time, and it's such a big hassle to do that. And you've only been knowing it from the big brands, like big car brands, big airlines that had sort of their own branded credit cards, for example, and so on. And if you're thinking about smaller SMEs or software companies, you don't go to the big old school banks to embed banking. It's the model is just not the right one that they currently offer. So if you think about Hubuc and others, how they're doing it, taking a more software and technology-led approach where you just quickly connect to the sandbox. You don't even need to talk to some old sales dude, at the bank. You just go to the fintech company and go to the sandbox and check out the functionalities and check out if that works with your own systems, and can already experiment with it and see how that makes sense for your own customers. And I think that's at the end of the day the point, so that it makes really sense for your own customer group where you already have existing brand equity, customers already use your products, And if you see that it makes sense to integrate more banking products, which could be cards, which could be embedded accounts, which could be lending, and so on. And of course, the regulatory stuff, including like KYC and so on, that you use the new type of banking as a service platforms like Hubuc to integrate that easily into your own offerings, whatever it is. And I think that we will see that also in non-financial sectors as well. That's now this sort of barrier to do that is now falling quickly. And I think from that perspective, in the next 5-10 years, I think that will definitely take some time. You will see more and more of those use cases. And today we already have it in Uber, in the taxi apps in Europe. You can already have this Apple Pay and embedded functionalities already. And I think we will see more and more of that because it's just getting easier to do it. At the same time, I think there's also a huge knowledge gap because not everyone knows about monetization models in banking, like interchange, for example. Not everyone knows about the regulatory issues that you need to, for example, in some cases, you need to do KYC and so on. So think about a software company that provides accounting or ERP systems. They might not know about the potential of embedding fintech. So I think there's also a huge issue that the new providers need to educate this whole market in what's possible in embedded finance and so on. And for me, there will definitely be a huge shift in the market that more and more of those, especially software providers, will embed banking. I'm 100% sure about that. If you think, for example, about SMEs, small businesses, they already use digital tools anyways now, especially now. So why wouldn't you have all your banking already in your accounting app? And you can already access your accounts, you can make payments, you can even get specialized lending because all the data is already there. The bank maybe doesn't have access to all this data. So embedding banking will definitely make sense for a lot of companies, probably not for everyone, but since you have now new banking as a service providers like Hubuc, I'm 100% sure that we will see more of those use cases.
Okay. I was thinking while you were talking, I mean, for instance, Hubuc is an example of how you can access banking capabilities from a platform, which is aggregating non-banking institutions. We are aggregating, right, companies like CurrencyCloud to be able to access their Forex capabilities, deposit accounts. We are aggregating companies like Marquita, where with them you can process your payments. We are partnering with Mastercard in order to be able to provide those payment methods that our customers require. We aggregate companies such as Onfido or Comply Advantage in order to provide KYC and MAL coverage, right? So at the end, my question is, what's the role for traditional banks to play within this scenario that we are talking here, and how do you see them to, they roll among all of this? What's the part of them within this entire scenario?
I would say I see Adrian has a great point in knowledge. I mean, it is perceived that this industry is there is a lot of regulations around this, and I think unfortunately it won't go away. I mean, you see a lot of regulations needed to handle the flow of money, and I think that won't go away. I think that will be something that will stay there, and as it becomes more and more digital, I think you need, unfortunately, on that side to have even stricter regulations, probably on both the speed that you move money, but also where does the money go and from where does it come. So a lot of this, unfortunately, needs to be put into the systems. And I think not everyone can, let's say, become this fintech because it's simply going to be regulated on how you do this. So there is a need to make sure that the different players are educated on the capabilities and what you can do and what you can't do. So I think, coming to your question, Ignacio, I think the let's say the traditional retail banks or banks, they do sit on a lot of expertise in this area, and I think if they use this in the right way, where they clone itself and become partly still continue to act as the account owner, but also become the challenger in aggregating different products and services, and maybe also go into do the lending, do also insurance or pensions, and I mean this bundling of things which are connected to investment, connected to your financial situation. I think that will be somewhere where also the let's say the traditional banks will stay and continue to be part of the value chain. Then it's more of a question, how much and how quick are they to adopt to open banking, open finance, and at the end open data, which I think the data part will play a big role in when it comes to offering new types of products and services.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, we've got to remember that banks have got a fantastic business model, and they're not especially incentivized to give up control and to change the status quo, nor should they. You know, it's not their responsibility to do that. I think that, and they're not set up to do it either, you know, and they would say that themselves. I think you'll always see banks involved when it makes sense to do so. I think that the Apple, you know, the new Apple card, for example, that was launched with Goldman Sachs? I want to say it was a Goldman Sachs card. Yeah. So, you know, that's a great example of, you know, a large bank, not even retail focused bank, but, you know, essentially offering banking as a service to a huge tech company, you know. And look, absolutely that sort of stuff will happen. We still see it with airlines, but probably where these banks are never going to be able to play or want to play is that smaller space, you know, that truly innovative space. And I think that's where fintechs like Hubuc, but the fintech community have got the responsibility to kind of really run with this and offer this innovation at these sorts of levels, and then you see it sort of make its way up through. So I suppose the direct answer would be, what role the bank's going to play? In my view, they're going to play a role, but they're going to play at the absolute top end, you know, where it suits them. And there's everything below that. I think the responsibility lies with the fintech community.
Oh, absolutely, and I couldn't agree more in the 2 points that you guys have made, right? So when we look at the disruption that is happening within the financial space, industry space, right? We do see the most, and I think this is true even outside of financial service. Actually, innovation does tend to take place in the startups, in that agile environment. I think there's paper after paper and white paper after white paper written on that, right? So there's no surprise that cutting edge technology and all of those things are going to continue coming from outside these large institutions. Having said that, I will also say that yes, players are chipping away at the traditional business model for financial services, large banks, right? There are things that are chipping away and taking away from the banks. But I think in my mind, and I think this was articulated earlier, one, we still don't know how and how things are going to pan out for scale, right? And I'll give you a little example. When I was at Citi before, and I was in something called as Global Transaction Services. And I'm speaking from memory 7-8 years ago, but I remember Global Transaction Services used to transact 3 trillion transactions, or $3 trillion we used to transact per day, or some odd number like that, right? That's a level of scale that, I mean, at least from my understanding, when you get to that scale, it's a different level of technology, infrastructure, how the world goes around, and that's still untested. I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's untested, and there's a way to get there. right? So that's point number one, right? How does it actually work when it scales? And then the second thing I think that we miss out quite a bit when we talk about large banks and, are they going to exist and so on and so forth, is really the regulatory environment. I think you alluded to it, right? Talking about control and giving away control, but it's also the regulations and how the regulations do to it, right? Like a large bank or large pharmaceutical or anything like that is under a lot more focus and is looked at a lot more closely because they just have larger impact when they do stuff than smaller fintech players, right? So one could argue, I think when you look at the roles and in the future, there are still some uncharted territories that we'll still have to explore and see how it sees. And I think I would also add that I think banks know and acknowledge this, right? Goldman, of course, is a fantastic example of how they've built this capability. But you also, I mean, when you look at, I don't know, the VC space, you see a lot of large banks participating in it. When you look at innovation programs and hackathons, I mean, in London, we have Barclays really sponsoring that. So I think there is an acknowledgement. I think there is a understanding, and I think we still have to see how that all pans out. So an innovation does, in my view at least, doesn't mean just coming up with a cool new product, right? Innovation is, there's a new product piece, but then there's also process innovation and thinking innovation, right? So innovation falls under a spectrum. And yes, while fintechs and new companies are definitely on that and driving force behind it, I think there's a role to play for a lot of other players as well, in my mind.
Yeah, I think I would agree. If you look at the global banking market, Goldman Sachs and BBVA are the ones that are currently now pushing quite hard on platform business models. Both of them have now won Google, I think, as one of their partners for new current account, Goldman partnering with Apple and so on. But looking at it from a broader perspective, I disagree with some points. I think maybe in some banks, they have understood that there is a new business, like they need to look into API and platform business models. But if you go to a C-level and board level at the bigger banks and ask them what an API is, I'm assuming you will not get a lot of answers. So I think there's first of all, there's a huge, and of course there's no one to blame because that has never been their business model before. But if you look at the European markets, banks are losing out on profits continuously since last years. They're closing down branches. PSD2 is pushing them now at least to look at APIs and to monetize their data and capabilities. So I think banks are thinking about it. Some of them have really understood that this is one potential model of the future, and BBVA and Goldman are actively working on it. But I think for the big banks at the moment, there's a big sort of leadership and commitment issue because it's just a completely different business model if you go into distributing your products over APIs and so on, and you have other monetization models and so on. So I think there's one big part is the leadership at the big banks at the moment. The second one is the organizational structure. If you work technology-led, it's just completely different to what banks have been doing so far, and you need new structures, new processes. And as you know, the big banks have so many employees that takes a while until you switch to new operating models. And of course, the third one is this whole topic of technological capabilities. And if you visit the big banks at the moment, they're still stuck in core banking system migration programs from 10 years ago. And so technology issue is also a big part of it. So I think the model of the future is definitely to carve it out, or at least to build like new greenfield propositions in the space. And Goldman and BBVA, they have all sort of launched new units for this whole platform business models, and I think that is definitely the way to go. But of course, not every bank has the resources to do that. So the consolidation will happen anyways. I think the ones that have the technology capabilities, they now need to move into the space. Some banks are doing it, and the others probably they will be too late. So yeah, I think that. It'll be interesting to see how the big banks react. But I think in Europe and so on, of course, in the UK as well, you have the open banking initiatives, and in Europe we have PSD2 anyway. So it is coming, but the way like the API units, for example, or open banking units at the bigger banks, they're not the one that has the biggest say when it comes to strategy and the future role of the bank. So yeah, there's still a lot of work to do. So I would definitely bet on the new technology providers and fintechs to move the market, and then some banks will have a look at it and probably copy what works best. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how the banks will play a role in this whole API-driven banking ecosystem.
Yeah, I would like to add, Adrian, what you're saying there, and really point also at the EU Commission and how EU has implemented GDPR and PSD2, which I think are now putting a lot of pressure on these, let's say, legacy banks. And like you say, they are hard times in catching up, and this open API and all this what the European Union is doing. I think this gives fintechs a great opportunity, especially in Europe, to become players that can launch financial services much quicker than in other parts of the world. If you look at US, which are really starting to get way behind, at least if you talk about regulations. So I think there is a big opportunity coming up now with PSD2 and probably then PSD3, which obviously the legacy banks, they haven't really understood it, definitely not on C-level, but they need to wake up soon, and because they are being forced by political means.
No, absolutely, and as sorry, just to add to that last part, like I see both your points, right? And I don't think it's this whole concept of winner takes all, and I think that's the part that I'm unclear on, right? Are we going to have real clear winners, or are we going to just, are we not just, but are we going to coexist, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, and I can say this from a Mastercard perspective of what we're seeing, right? Because we're seeing, obviously, we remain agnostic. We'll work with all partners. All partners are important to us, and I think, will it be winner takes all kind of situation, or would it be coexistence? Because at the end of the day, I think we all just want to make sure we provide the maximum choice to people, right? If that's the mandate, then I think we'll see a combination of both. And so with that, I think there'll be a role for both to play and drive this forward.
Mm-hmm.
Good. I know that we are running out of time. I would like to take a few minutes to answer some questions from the attendees. Thank you very much for participating on the questions. We have a few questions that maybe we'll not be able to reply them all, especially the ones that, you know, I'm really happy that, you know, there is an interest on how Hubuc can help you with your solutions, how we integrate with partners such as CurrencyCloud. I will reply to them one by one, that's for sure. I would like to focus a little bit on the more broader questions that we received. For instance, Paulina asked us, which business sectors can potentially benefit the most from banking as a platform, banking as a service in the next 10 years? So specifically, which sectors do you see that they will, you know, get most of these platforms?
I would say software as a service, 100%. Because they already have the customers in their systems. As I said, I'm really bullish on the SMEs software segment, because they spend so much time already in those software systems. They do their accounting there, they write invoices every week there. So why wouldn't you access your banking already in those interfaces? And I think in the Nordics, if you look in the European landscape, there are really interesting examples. There's, for example, one player, Aprilia Bank. They're 100% running on a white label model and only integrate with accounting providers to provide factoring based on the accounting data that is in those systems, which is a huge advantage for all those SMEs that already use that for their accounting, and then they can already click on a button and get loans and so on. So I think that is definitely a segment that will benefit tremendously from banking as a service, especially as an add-on revenue stream for them. So I think software is definitely one of the big sectors that will benefit, and that will also do it in the first phase.
Yeah. I think just talking a bit longer term, I think so obviously, yes, absolutely, those sectors, those CRM tool managers and all of those, they're already in play. I think we're looking at merchants and all of those guys that are already in play. When I look at the longer term focus, I think my logical mind would say what are the ones that have had the hardest time to embed financial services and get technology and are still perhaps very, very cash heavy in some sense, or paper heavy in some sense. And from that perspective, I would say the biggest impact will probably come when governments and those guys start finding a way to, leverage companies like this and be able to digitize, whether that be the vouchers, whether that be benefits, I think that is the hugest space and the hugest impact, because that will be every citizen of every country and every immigrant everywhere, right? So I think that to me is probably what I think we could achieve by promoting banking as a service in the market.
Yeah, I believe also like the short term, I definitely think SME is going to benefit from this initially with all accounting needed and also bookkeeping and reporting also into tax authorities or whatever you need to do in terms of having the company in shape, and then moving also into how you leverage your customer base. That is also going to benefit. So everything from how you handle your employees to also how you handle your customers on the SME side, and then eventually you move into like the bigger play where you have big retailers and wholesale companies that if you especially look at the B2B side, which there might be a lot of brands which are not really known where you do a B2B business. And this B2B business, I think, would benefit greatly from how you can handle payment between companies and cash flow, etc. I think that is where both financial services can tap into short-term lending or something, but also how you handle then the invoices between companies. So there is, and you can then add also how you build up with also insurances and things like that. So that's more the long-term play, which I see.
Maybe one, or yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah, just one quick addition. I think what's also interesting to look at is that banking as a service or banking as a platform can definitely serve companies that want to integrate financial services for their own end customers. So any brand that has sticky services and good brand equity already in the market, I think that they should definitely have a look at integrating banking as a service. And of course, then you have companies that have a huge workforce who maybe travel around and need to pay for whatever they need to do their work, and need to pay for taxis, need to pay for whatever they need to do, right? So there's also a huge opportunity to integrate banking just to increase internal efficiencies. So that could also be a big segment, which could be either travel agencies, which could be even consultancies, and that just have their own card issuing internally in-house. So that yeah, I think that is also an interesting segment to look at.
Yeah, I think all kind of everything's been covered there. I mean, the only thing I would just add is, in the long term, I think we've got a new generation of consumer who trusts their phone more than their bank account. And in the long term, why wouldn't someone like Instagram make use of banking as a service, or at least utility providers? They do your Wi-Fi, they do your phone. I think, where does it really end? I think one day you're going to have the as Adrian says, the largest brands with the most equity. Why wouldn't they make use of that by adding more value?
Thank you. I think we just reached out the end of the session. Again, thank you very much all the participants for all your questions, and our apologies. Maybe we should have taken 1 hour and a half for this session. It's exciting to see how interesting is becoming this kind of platform models within the ecosystem. And personally, I really enjoyed the whole conversation. I learned a lot from the four of you. And yeah, as a conclusion, from Hubuc, we believe that this new model of accessing banking products and payments products are here to stay. That we'll see more and more non-fintech and non-financial institutions embedding their financial service into their products, because they will be able to create better value chain for their customers. They will be able to drive revenue out of them, and we are happy to be part of this revolution. Okay, because we see it as really a revolution for the coming years. And finally, actors like yourself that enable platforms like us and the whole ecosystem are a really important part of it too. So I would really like to thank you, Fredrik, Lewis, Amrita, Adrian, to join us today.
Thank you
for having us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Thanks from my side as well. Yeah.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right, you too. Thanks for all the participants. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.